Elara Sterling had waited for years for this baby. For years of losing pregnancies, sitting in waiting rooms, and holding a marriage together that had stopped making sense long before she admitted it. And then the baby came. Healthy. Crying. Real. And the first thing Elara felt was not relief. It was fear. Not of the birth. Not of being a mother. Of the man on the other side of the room holding her child. Stellan Prescott had not answered his phone when her labor started. Her sister Bryn drove her to the hospital, stayed through 8 hours, and was the first face Elara saw when it was over. Stellan arrived 40 minutes after the birth. No explanation. No apology. He walked straight past everyone, lifted the baby from the bassinet without asking, and stood there holding her like he had been present the whole time. Elara watched him and felt cold. 3 years of marriage and she could not tell you what he did for work. Consulting, he said. Contracts. The money is complicated right now. Cash appeared from places she never saw him earn. He disappeared for days and came back without explanation. He had a second phone she had seen exactly once, and when she asked about it he redirected the conversation so smoothly the question just ceased to exist. There was an eviction notice he hid until they were 4 days from losing the apartment. A flight to Singapore he denied until she found the receipt. A bank account that nearly emptied 18 months ago that he called a transfer error. She chose to believe him because she was pregnant and could not afford not to. She had stayed because of the baby. That was the honest version. And now he was standing in that hospital room holding their newborn with an expression she had never seen on his face. Something open. Unguarded. And that was exactly what frightened her. Because Stellan's face was never open. It was always managed, always giving you precisely what it decided to give you. Seeing something different did not feel like a breakthrough. It felt like the moment before something goes wrong. Bryn was in the corner. The sister who had said once, carefully, 2 years ago, that she did not trust Stellan. Elara had shut it down immediately. Bryn never raised it again. But she had never stopped thinking it. They looked at each other across that hospital room. Elara held out her arms. No explanation. No words. Just her face telling him to hand the baby over right now. Stellan looked at her. Then he walked over, placed the baby in her arms, and stepped back. 30 seconds. That is how long Elara held her daughter before she looked at Bryn. Bryn was already moving. Elara placed the baby in her sister's arms and said 3 words. Take her home. Bryn walked out without looking back. Without hesitating. Without a single glance at Stellan. He had been facing the window. When he turned around and understood what had happened, his face went completely still. Not angry. Something quieter than anger and far more unsettling. He asked where the baby was. Low. In a voice that had nothing to do with being calm. Elara said nothing. She did not know yet that the man standing 4 feet away from her, in a jacket he had owned for 2 years, was secretly worth $95 billion. She did not know that everything she believed about her marriage was wrong in a way she had never once considered. She did not know that the decision she had just made in 30 seconds of fear was about to become the most devastating mistake of her life. Stellan knew. And the look on his face said he already understood exactly what she had just started. To understand why Elara did what she did, you have to go back and see what those 4 years actually looked like. The first miscarriage was 11 months into the marriage. Stellan sat with her at the hospital and said the right things. He was good when things fell apart. It was the ordinary days he could not manage. Second miscarriage 14 months later. Third, 8 months after that. By the third one something between them had broken quietly and neither of them named it. They kept trying. But a careful distance had settled into the house, a way of existing around each other that had more to do with not getting hurt than with love. Elara tried to talk about it. Stellan was not someone who refused conversation. He was harder to deal with than that. He would listen, respond, ask questions. And at the end Elara would realize she had shared everything inside her and received nothing back. Every single time. Full on her side. Empty on his. Other things accumulated. Consistently away more than home. Bills always late. They moved to a smaller apartment in year 2. Temporary, he said. 2 years later still there. Money eventually appeared, just enough. Always untraceable. She asked once to go through their finances together. He said of course. It never happened. She asked again. He apologized. She let too many things go and told herself that was just what marriage required. Then the 4th pregnancy held. Week after week. She stopped being afraid to trust it and something in her came back to life. She wanted Stellan to come back with her. He seemed genuinely happy. But even in the better months there was still a door inside him she could not get near. 7 months in she found the message. Not looking. His phone was on the counter and the screen lit up while she was right there. 6 words. Package confirmed. Arrival window stands. The sender was a string of letters. No name. No context. One message in the thread. Nothing before it. Nothing after. She put it down when she heard him in the hallway and never found the right moment to ask. She carried those 6 words for 2 months, built explanations around them, and almost convinced herself they were nothing. Almost. Then labor started. She called. He did not pick up. Bryn drove her. 8 hours later the baby arrived and 40 minutes after that Stellan walked through the door and went straight to his daughter like he had not missed a single thing. And standing there watching him, something settled in Elara with a cold and final clarity. She did not know who she had married. And she had just let him pick up her child. Stellan did not raise his voice after Bryn left. He stood still and asked where the baby was. Safe, she said. Where? With Bryn. He sat in the chair beside the bed, put his hands on his knees, and looked at the floor. Not a man holding his temper. Something quieter than that. Something that unsettled her more than anger would have. A nurse came in, saw the empty bassinet, and said the baby needed to return for feeding checks. Elara said her sister had stepped out briefly. The nurse's expression made clear that answer had a short life. Stellan stood and said he was going to get his daughter. Elara said no. He stopped. She told him the baby was staying with Bryn overnight. That she needed time. That she was asking him to respect that. Something moved across his face when she said respect. He said carefully that she had removed their child from the room without a word and given her to someone else, and he was not going to pretend that was something he could simply absorb. She said she understood. He asked why. She said nothing. Because answering meant saying out loud that she did not trust him. And once that was said, it could not be taken back. Even after what she had already done, she was not ready for it to be that permanent. He left 2 hours later without saying goodbye. Footsteps. Elevator. Silence. She lay there and told herself she had done the right thing until the words stopped meaning anything at all. The next afternoon she went home alone. He was already at the apartment. He told her he had called a lawyer. Not as a threat. He had woken up not knowing whether his wife was going to let him see his daughter again, and he did not know what else to do. That word. Lawyer. The entire room shifted. She understood for the first time what she had actually started. A 30-second decision now had legal shape and its own direction. And she was not sure she was the one steering it. She looked at him and asked what he was actually hiding. His face did something calculated. Not guilt. Not defensiveness. The specific expression of someone deciding how much truth they can afford to release right now. He took a breath. His second phone rang. He looked at the screen. Whatever he saw closed him down completely. He walked out and pulled the door behind him. She sat in the silence listening to his voice through the wall. Controlled. Tight. The tone he used when something needed all of him and he did not want her anywhere near it. She had asked him directly what he was hiding. He had been about to tell her. And something on that phone just took priority over his marriage. A letter arrived 4 days later. Marin Whitlock, attorney. Formal language about a parenting arrangement while the parties addressed an unresolved domestic situation. Elara called Arden Kingsley, a family lawyer Bryn recommended. Stay calm, Arden said. This is documentation, not aggression. Nothing reactive. Elara had already done the reactive thing. She knew that. Bryn brought the baby back on day 3. Still no official name. The hospital had left a voicemail. Birth certificate. End of week. Stellan came on day 5 without calling. Sat with his daughter 40 minutes. Asked once if she needed anything. Left when Elara said no. She watched him hold that baby and could not find what she had felt in the hospital room. He held her like someone terrified of losing her. She noticed it and had nowhere to put it. On day 7 she started searching. The consulting firm first. 3 years of hearing the name and never once looking it up. It existed. A registration. A financial district address. A generic voicemail. She searched his name. Directory listings. One trade publication mentioned for years ago. Nothing useful. She searched the office address. 40-story building in the financial district. She pulled the suite number from the registration and checked the building directory. A rental group. A name she had never heard once in 3 years of marriage. A rental group was not a consulting firm. Private investment holding company. For continents. The most recent financial filing listed managed assets at a number that her brain kept sliding off of. It had nothing to do with late rent. Nothing to do with the smaller apartment. Nothing to do with 3 years of explanations she had swallowed whole. She searched for the founder. S.R. Prescott. One result when she put both names together. A financial newsletter. 2 years ago. A passing mention. S.R. Prescott, founder of a rental group, known for an unusually low public profile given the scale at which he operates. The scale at which he operates. She closed the laptop and drove to the building. The receptionist checked the suite and said it was not open to the public. Elara gave her married name. The receptionist's face changed. A brief call. Less than 30 seconds. When she turned back she was standing differently. Someone would be right down. The elevator opened. The man who stepped out had the particular stillness of someone who had held authority for a very long time. He looked at Elara with recognition she had not introduced herself to receive. He said her name. Not as a question. Mr. Prescott had been expecting this moment for some time, he said. He asked her to follow him. Corbin Langford. Chief Operating Officer. 11 years with Stellan. 32nd floor. In the conference room he offered water. She said yes. Her mouth had gone dry before the elevator stopped moving. She asked what this place was. Primary holding structure for Stellan's personal investments, he said. Operating 14 years. She asked what those investments were worth. He looked at her. Then he said the number. $95 billion. No pause. No build-up. Just a number in the air between them. And she could not connect it to a single day of the marriage she thought she had been living. Not the smaller apartment. Not the late bills. Not the worn jacket. Not one conversation. Not one explanation she had believed without question. The woman who had adjusted. Who had accepted. Who had told herself this was just what love looked like sometimes. That woman had been living next to $95 billion and did not know it. She asked Corbin why. He said that was a question for Stellan. Stellan came through a side door 12 minutes later and stopped when he saw her face. Whatever he had prepared on the way over was already gone. She asked how long. The company existed before they met, he said. The way they lived was deliberate. It was not deception the way she was thinking about it. She asked what way she was thinking. He said she was thinking he hid the money to control her. That was not it. He grew up watching his father's wealth pull apart every real thing around it. The way it made people impossible to read. The way it got between everything. He decided before he was 30 that if he ever found something genuine he needed to know it was genuine first, before any of that entered the room. She said that was not a decision he could make alone. He said he knew. She said 3 years. The bills. The smaller apartment. 3 years of absorbing a version of their life that was deliberately kept smaller than the truth. Finding that out did not just change what she knew about him. It changed what she understood about herself. About what she had accepted. About what she had quietly carried and called love when it was really just trust given to someone who had not been honest enough to deserve it. He said the difficulty was real. The money was always kept elsewhere intentionally. The life they built was the only way he knew to find out whether what they had was actually true. She asked when he had planned to tell her. After the baby, he said. He had been trying to find the right time for months and ran out of it. 3 years and he ran out of time. She asked whether his lawyer knew who he actually was. He said yes. She asked what that meant for her. Given the assets. Given the hospital. He said it plainly. A judge would need to be involved. Given the money and the fact that she had removed the baby without his consent, this had moved past what two people could quietly resolve. Bryn could not simply bring Delaney home. Not without a court order. Elara had taken her daughter from that room to protect her from a man she believed could not be trusted. And she had made her newborn the subject of a custody case involving $95 billion. Arden confirmed it that evening. Courts moved carefully with stakes like these. Carefully meant slowly. Delaney was not coming home soon. The temporary arrangement came 4 days later. Delaney would stay with Bryn. Elara had daily access. Stellan had 3 supervised visits per week. Supervised. She read that word and felt ashamed before she felt anything else. She thought about him sitting in a room with a coordinator watching him hold his own child. She thought about how carefully he had held that baby in the hospital. She had looked at that exact same care and decided it was threatening. That was the part she could not get past. Not what he had hidden. But what she had done with a fear that turned out to be aimed at the wrong thing. She went to Bryn's every day. Held Delaney. Sat in the spare room after she fell asleep because going home meant walking past the small white blanket still folded on the arm of the couch. Every time she passed it she felt what 30 seconds had cost. 3 weeks out a proposal came through the lawyers. 1 mediated session. No attorneys. No recordings. Just the 2 of them and whatever could still be said directly. He also asked that they name the baby together before the next court date. She left it on the table for 2 days. On the 3rd morning she woke before light and lay there thinking about a child with no name sleeping in a portable crib in her sister's spare room because her parents were too broken to sit in the same room without lawyers. She called Arden and said she would go. Sable Hargrove. 14th floor of a building neither of them had been to before. Small room. Plain. 2 chairs angled toward each other. A low table between them. 1 person speaks, the other listens. No interruptions. The goal is honesty, not resolution. Sable asked Elara to begin. She looked at Stellan and talked. She said she had been afraid for months in a way she could not name or prove. She made a decision in 30 seconds she cannot undo. She was sorry. He held her gaze and stayed quiet. She said she was wrong about what he was hiding. But she was not wrong that something was hidden. Those are not the same thing and she needed him to hear that. The fear was real. She had not invented it. Then the harder part. 3 years of quietly adjusting to a version of their life she now knew was constructed. Finding that out did not just change what she knew about him. It changed what she understood about herself. About the difference between trusting someone and simply not having enough information to know better. Sable looked at Stellan. He said everything she described was on him. Not the fear in the hospital, but everything that built it. 3 years of a life he designed without asking whether she had the right to be part of that decision. She did. He took that from her. He said he told himself it was protection. Making sure what they had was real before the money changed everything. Then it became habit. Then a wall. And the longer it stood, the harder it felt to take it down. His deepest fear was that telling her the truth would make her go back and question all of it. Whether any of what passed between them had been real or just a response to a version of him he had carefully kept in place. She said that was exactly what she was doing right now. He said he knew. Neither of them looked away. Sable said the child had no legal name. For days to the deadline. Could they handle it today? Stellan reached into his jacket and placed a folded piece of paper on the table. One name, he said. Had not told his lawyer. Had not told Corbin. Had not said it to anyone. It meant something real. He would explain after she opened it. Her choice. She picked it up. Unfolded it. Read it. Stop breathing. Her mother's name. Her mother who had died the year before the first miscarriage. Whose name Elara had never once said directly to Stellan. Whose name she had written in the journal on her nightstand. She looked up at him. He said 2 years into the marriage, the night she cried herself to sleep after the second miscarriage, he sat on the floor in the dark beside the bed because he did not know what else to do. He opened the journal to one page. Read one paragraph. About the last real conversation she had with her mother. About the name she had already decided to give her first daughter someday. He closed it and never opened it again. He had been holding that name for 2 years. Waiting for her to bring it to him first. She never had. She had stopped bringing things to him. She asked when he had decided to tell her the truth. Before the hospital or after? The night before her labor started, he said. He came home to tell her everything and found her already in pain with Bryn on the way. He told himself 12 hours would not matter. He arrived 40 minutes late because he was at the Arenthal offices finishing a document. He placed it on the table beside the folded paper. A legal asset transfer. Dated the morning of the birth. Her name already printed on it. She looked at the document. Then at him. She had taken their daughter from his arms on the same morning he had put her name on $95 billion. He said yes. She asked why he had not shown her this in the month that followed. He said she had been afraid and he was not willing to use money to answer fear. He had spent his whole life making sure wealth was never the reason someone stayed close to him. Walking in with a document would have made him exactly the man he had always refused to become. So he sat through supervised visits with a stranger watching him hold his own child. Said nothing. Because the only proof he had was the one thing he had always kept out of it. She stopped trying to find an angle that let anyone off the hook. 30 seconds. That was the decision. Built on 3 years of secrecy. Built on a fear she recognized because she was carrying the same one. Neither of them had trusted the other enough to say the true thing when it mattered most. Both of them had caused damage the other would spend years absorbing. No innocent party. Just 2 people who had let fear make every decision for them. And a child who had paid for it before she was old enough to know her own name. She picked up the folded paper with her mother's name on it. She said she wanted to bring her daughter home. He said there was nothing he had wanted more for the past month. They both stood. Sable had nothing left to say. The court order came 6 days later. Both parents on the paperwork. The name filed and made permanent. Delaney Prescott. Elara brought her home that afternoon and stood in the hallway holding her and felt the full weight of the past month press into a single moment. Her daughter was home. She was also holding a child who had spent her first week somewhere else because of 30 seconds aimed in the wrong direction. Delaney would not remember any of it. Elara would not forget a second of it for the rest of her life. The marriage did not bounce back. Stellan moved back in 8 weeks later and took the second bedroom. They built something steady around Delaney. Saw Sable every 2 weeks. Some evenings felt close to what things used to be. Some mornings were a sharp reminder of how far they still had to go. It was not a clean recovery. It was not supposed to be. But there was honesty in the marriage now that had never existed before. The kind that only comes after everything false has already been removed. 14 months after Delaney came home, on a quiet Saturday morning, Elara walked into the kitchen and found Stellan already up. Delaney was asleep. The apartment was still. He looked up when she came in with an ease that had taken a long time to return. The kind that only exists when someone has finally stopped waiting for things to fall apart. He put a cup of coffee on the counter for her without being asked. She sat down and told him she had something to say. He turned around and waited. She had taken the test the night before. Had not slept. Had spent the hours between midnight and that morning going back and forth until she understood that ready was not the right question. She told him. He went still on the other side of the kitchen. Then he crossed the room, sat down in front of her, and took both her hands in his. Neither did she. There was a time when silence between them meant something was being hidden. When the quiet was just the shape of everything neither of them would say out loud. When sitting in the same room without talking felt like a warning. This was different. This was just two people sitting with something real. Something that had survived both of them. They had lied to each other in different ways and for different reasons and had both called it protection. They had each made a decision alone that was not theirs to make alone. And the damage from that had been real and slow and expensive in ways that had nothing to do with money. But they were still there. Not because the hard parts were over. Some of the hard parts would never be fully over. They were still there because at some point, on the other side of everything that had broken, they had each looked at what remained and decided it was enough to stay for. That is not a love story. That is just the truth of what love actually looks like when it survives something.